My name's Britt Conklin. I'm a veterinarian and a farrier, which in today's times is kind of considered a podiatrist in the Weatherford, Texas area. And Weatherford is a well-known area west of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex for cutting horses, the big horse area. Weatherford's considered the cutting horse capital of the world, and the cutting horse is a quarter horse influenced breed that shows in cattle, and it's very common here too, so people mostly probably understand what the cutting horse is. But we do a lot of different horses through that region there. I originally, though, grew up west of there. I grew up probably 300 miles west of there in the panhandle of Texas, which is a very farming, rural agriculture area, a lot of feed yards. So there's a lot of difference. It's a lot like it is in Australia in some ways, in the sense that the further east you go in the state of Texas, the more populated it gets, the more metropolitan it gets, the more the city influence there is, and the more it continually encroaches west to the rural areas. And where I grew up, again, was very rural, small town people, very conservative values, a great place to grow up. But horse industry is not that big, and just like in anything you want to get into, sometimes you've got to get yourself close to an area where that's an interest. And so we moved to Weatherford because of the horse population and the density they had and the ability to do what I do. And what I do is actually fill a niche. I fill a niche in the sense that there aren't that many veterinarians that are also farriers that can kind of bridge the two fields, or at least communicate well between both of those two professions and forward the health and welfare of the horse altogether. So it's been really good for us. Really has done well in that area to fulfill that need. When I grew up, again, mostly a farm kid, a lot of cattle, a lot of wheat pasture. And when I grew up, went to undergraduate school and began shoeing a few horses, really just not for any other reason than to make some money more than anything. And so I picked up the trade and began to progress. And when I went through veterinary school or professional school, began to develop that trade a little more. And so I really gained an interest and could realize the deficit between the veterinarian and the farrier, and became very interested in potentially filling that niche once I obtained my veterinary degree. And once I did that, began to proceed and progress in both of those fields. Dr. Hicks and the Equine Podiatry Center there had me come out to the Hoof Summit, or to this area, to really speak on simplifying therapeutic shoeing. And I've spoken on it different times throughout the United States, in Canada as well. And it's really, again, going back to boiling down therapeutic shoeing into a simplified approach. And therapeutic shoeing is nothing more than altering four things: leverage, tension, pressure, protection, in three different planes: up and down, side to side, and front to back. And when we follow a methodical approach of obtaining an accurate quantitative diagnosis and then understanding what's wrong and how bad it is, and then the anatomy associated with that, we then can develop a program a therapeutic shoeing protocol that will actually treat the problem itself. And that's all we did here. I didn't come with a specific shoe or a specific method or a specific appliance. It's backing up and learning how to think about the problem and not what to think. Doing podiatry is a niche within a niche, because as a veterinarian you can do mixed animal, small animal. We obviously just focus on horses, which is a niche in itself. And then within that community you can have your surgeons, your medicine people, a lot of different services that are tailored to certain areas, like a surgeon. And then for me, for example, the niche within the niche would be dealing with podiatry. But even within that, it's fairly broad, but I would say that most of mine deals with performance podiatry. We do a fair amount of laminitis, we do a fair amount of other issues that incorporate the general scheme of podiatry, but more often than not, we're dealing with the performance end of the horse, and we're trying to fine-tune that. So a lot of mine is lameness, and it's lameness that corresponds to the foot, or can we use the foot to improve the performance of the horse. I mean, a farrier is going to be looking at the foot. The veterinarian oftentimes is just going to be looking at the medical condition of the horse, and sometimes we've got to put those two things together. And just like here, if we talk about what the things we discussed in lecture, probably the most important thing is just getting a broad general idea of what we're actually doing. There's so many different products out there, so many different shoes, so many different applications, and oftentimes the farrier or the veterinarian gets confused. And so what I've tried to do, and often what I lecture on, is boiling that down into some simple principles. And as a veterinarian or a farrier, as a horse comes in and if it has a problem and we're going to do something to improve it, dealing with the foot, then we need to do some simple things. We need to obviously first obtain an accurate diagnosis. And what I like to do, what I tell people, is we need an accurate quantitative diagnosis. So we need to know where the problem is and how bad is the problem, and that's the only way that we can develop a protocol to actually fix the problem that's there. Oftentimes we're talking about things that may not matter. We're shooing an x-ray, or we're trying to change something and there's not any real problem there. And so it's important for us to gain an appropriate diagnosis. Where is the problem? And then how bad is the problem? And then we can begin to walk through some of these other steps. Really, what we're trying to do is educate veterinarians and farriers, and really you're probably trying to educate more of the veterinarian than the farrier in how to communicate with the farrier, because farriers, they're comfortable with what they've been doing, maybe a certain application or a certain set of shoes, and when we boil everything down, we're only doing a few things. And I try to teach veterinarians to convey a mechanical shoeing prescription, not a shoe choice. In other words, if I have a problem, what we want to identify is how can we improve that problem mechanically and then convey that to the farrier so that I'm not telling him, you need to apply this shoe in this situation. And we're trying to teach veterinarians in all reality how to think and not necessarily what to think. You know, going through school, we oftentimes learn that we need to match appliances to a problem. So a horse is laminitic, we need to put a heart bar on it, or a horse has navicular disease, so we have to put a wedge shoe or a square toe. And in reality, when you look at that, we're only doing about 4 things in 3 different planes. And really, when you boil it down, we're addressing leverage, tension, pressure, or protection. And when you can communicate to a farrier, hey, we have a certain problem here, and I want to reduce leverage at the toe, and I want to reduce tension in the deep flexor tendon, I want to protect the sole, and I want to redistribute pressure away from the heels and put it into the sole of the foot. When you convey that prescription to a farrier, then they have the ability to use the tools and the shoes and the appliances that they're comfortable with and can fulfill that mechanical shoeing objective versus me saying you need to put this type of shoe on that foot. And then not only is there so many variables, but there's so many different ideas, so many different approaches. And again, if we just boil it down, we can only work on the foot up and down, side to side, or front to back, and variations associated with that. Anything we put on a foot, that's all we're doing. We're either doing something up and down on the foot, from the front to the back, from side to side. And so it's not rocket science, and we're not curing cancer. In reality, it's pretty simple. And it's just figuring out when to do what is probably the most difficult thing, and then conveying that in an appropriate form to somebody that can mechanically achieve that objective. I think worldwide, approaching a problem depends on your experience, your background, and the time that you've devoted to understanding what's going on. So Link, for example, is an individual who's been in the business a long time who can really see a lot of different things. And it doesn't matter, in the same sense, a farrier or a veterinarian that's been dealing with the same discipline or the same issues over and over and over refines themselves to understand it. So I don't think that there's a cultural difference, and I don't think that there's a continental difference, if you want to call it that. It's a matter of education and experience over time, learning when to do what and how to address problems. And so you can see the varying range of experience here, whether they're American or Australian or whatever it may be. I don't think that the culture has anything to do with it. Well, I think that you know, the more global we get in some ways, and the easier information is to come across, your iPhone, your internet, you know, we start to recognize each other's differences as not being true differences in fundamentals, but there's a reason behind why we do a certain thing in a certain area. And so I think that, yeah, I think that oftentimes being closed-minded, especially in this industry, will get you in trouble. Because there's so much information out there, and you know, the day you quit learning is probably the time you need to stop. You know, you need to have an open mind enough that you can look at different things over a period of time and not get so tuned into a rut that you're unwilling to learn something new. And I think you can gain that information from a lot of different perspectives. You know, they may shoe a certain way in China because of the environmental conditions or the situation they're given, and so it's important not to become too critical or even to become too prideful that you don't take time to learn and listen and really seek out new information.